Welcome to our podcast,
Sage in the City, a podcast from the youth perspective in the city where we spotlight community stories, traditions, and modern day events, exploring and talking about community issues and struggles.
where you will hear from community members themselves, a podcast under Indigenous Protector Movement, aka IPM.
Which we'll get into a little later, but first, let us tell you a little bit of our history. Aneen, I'm Bear Dion. I'm from Southside Minneapolis. I'm from a place called Little Earth. My dad's from Turtle Mountain, my mom's from Standing Rock, and I am 22 winters.
Segu, my name is Savannah. I'm 22 winters. I was born and raised here in South Minneapolis, and I'm from Oneida Nation.
Welcome to the South Side of Minneapolis.
Southside, we outside. In 2020, the whole world's eyes were on Southside. On May 25th, George Floyd was stopped by MPD on 38th in Chicago. This quickly turned into a deadly case of police brutality. The disturbing video of Chauvin kneeling on his neck quickly went viral and sparked a worldwide outrage during the pandemic.
Outrage fueled by hurt and pain quickly turned into riots and protests, some involving violence, vandalism, looting, and even a couple of deaths. Though this was a period of heartache, it was also a time which emphasized the strength of the Southside community and the power of the people when we come together.
A personal experience of mine during this fight for justice was the gathering of jingle dress dancers at George Floyd Square. A group of Indigenous sisters showed up and showed out to transpire healing through jingle dress dancing, which was a beautiful experience. My best friend Anaya was one of the dancers that day. I remember after they finished dancing, she let out all of her emotions, so I gave her the most heartfelt hug I ever given anyone. The reason I remember this moment so vividly was because we're not the type of friends to show physical affection to one another. Yes, I will give my kidney to her if she needs it, but we've only ever hugged a few times ever. For me, this is important to mention because it goes to show the impact this time had on everybody. Every community affected by police brutality. When one of us is hurting, we are all hurting.
The heart of the community would transform in a way where we, as the indigenous people of the community, would protect ourselves and the heart of this movement.
AIM Patrol started back up in the South Side, and Little Earth Protectors also stood guard to contribute to community safety in order to avoid law enforcement and protect the community from the riot outbreak.
I spent the first couple of days inside the crib. I lived with my auntie at the time in Little Earth, and I do remember my family going out there on patrol. I felt like a boy staying inside, staying back with the women and children. It didn't feel right. I felt the urge to go out there and be with the other warriors, my family, and defend our homes, our people. I remember going out there on patrol for the first time, and my dad didn't take us to the end of the street. He took me to Franklin Avenue, and we went to Powwow Grounds parking lot. This was the HQ for the Native community defending the South Side. AIM was there as well. It was surreal seeing AIM there. I felt like I was seeing the past clashing with the present. AIM Patrol was right there in front of me. The stories of old come to life.
All of this felt significant considering that AIM, the American Indian Movement, was founded right here in South Minneapolis in 1968. But right in front of our eyes was the unfolding of a new movement. The indigenous community felt empowered to continue the fight for justice against systematic failures of the judicial and law enforcement alike. An example of these systematic failures is the case of Leonard Peltier, an AIM member who was wrongfully convicted of murdering 2 FBI agents on June 26, 1975.
2 years after the riots, Dionne-Thunder, an indigenous activist while working with AIM at the time, organized a 1,103-mile prayer walk known as the Walk for Justice from Minneapolis to Washington, D.C. The walk demanded freedom for Elder Leonard Peltier. The Walk for Justice became a huge milestone for Rachel, empowering her to continue advocating for the indigenous community.
Her journey through advocacy led her to the fight over the roof depot right here in South Minneapolis. The roof depot is a Superfund site containing arsenic, which is a hazardous and unhealthy chemical. It is located in East Phillips, right behind Little Earth. For years, the community attempted to buy the site from the city, resulting in refusal.
Dionne-Thunder, along with Vincent, Dionne, another community leader, and a group of community activists took stand on behalf of the people. From here, they demonstrated an action of occupation to halt demolition of the roof depot from the city. This was a catalyst for the creation of Indigenous Protector Movement.
Roof Depot is an example of the community's awareness of environmental and racial injustice. At the same time, the struggle for everyone to have a sustainable home in the Southside is seen when you walk down our streets. For years, Southside has witnessed evidence of homelessness. Although some see this as a reason for criminalization, the community continues to help our relatives and take care of them in any way we can. After all, there is a saying, never homeless before 1492.
While there is a presence of homelessness, there is also a heavy police and law enforcement response alike.
Recently, we have seen this presence, especially within the immigrant and indigenous communities here in the Southside, where our indigenous brothers and sisters from the North and South come together. Both of these communities stood in solidarity on June 3rd, 2025, where there was a sudden appearance of local police, ICE, FBI.
For legal purposes, we can't say any more on this topic, but just remember that no one is illegal on stolen land.
Okay, now we're here with Rachel Dionne-Thunder. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Tanse, Gananaskamoan, and Nanaskamoan, Upsis, Nanahiawak, Upsis, Rachel Dionne-Thunder. So I just said hello. My name is Rachel Dionne-Thunder. I am Plains Cree, Nihiawak, Treaty 8, Big Stone Cree Nation. And just happy to be here.
Thank you. We're happy to have you. Let's just go straight into what is IPM, what does it stand for, and I guess how did it start?
Okay. Yeah. How controversial do I want to get? Do I give the tea? I think I'll give a little bit of tea. Okay, so I guess for context, like, I'm second generation American Indian movement. A lot of us that are a part of IPM or the Indigenous Protector Movement, like in its full name, we're all second generation AIM or actively American Indian movement members. And so I used to be a regional director for what is known as the Grand Governing Council, which is just one faction of the American Indian movement that was started by Clyde Belcourt here in South Minneapolis. And so I was a director for like kind of the Midwest, like Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio area. And when I moved here to Minneapolis, there's so much indigenous activism that happens almost day to day. It seems there's just like almost like micro amounts and these larger scale events of indigenous activism happening here in South Minneapolis. But there was like this missing niche of resources for said actions. And so like a niche that typically in the past, like entities like the American Indian movement would have been filling. And so, me and some others approached some of the leadership of the Grand Governing Council and made a pitch to start something called the American Indigenous Movement. And we were actually trying to bring AIM into kind of like current times and start a 501c3 that could support this newer generation of indigenous activism in the city. And we were shot down. That's like a whole other conversation. And so we just stepped away from that faction of the American Indian movement, and we said, okay, we're going to do our own thing. And we started the Indigenous Protector Movement because there is that need that we're currently filling here in South Minneapolis.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nice. So I know like before Indigenous Protector Movement, you had some big roles in like Leonard Peltier and like the fight for his freedom. Mm-hmm. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that and like the walk for justice and just about, your experience in organizing it and everything?
Yeah. You know, and just for clarity, like, I'm still AIM. Like, I'm still American Indian Movement. The way that I look at AIM, it doesn't really matter what faction you're a part of. It's a way of life. It's a way of being. It's how you choose to live day to day. It's what are you doing for your community? What are you doing for yourself? What are you doing for your family? You know, how are you living your life in a way that honors tradition and our cultures and our ancestors, and brings us into a better future? So, like, with that, Leonard is really like a bridge between the past and now, because, you know, Leonard Peltier, just for those of you who are listening that might not know, Leonard Peltier was the longest held indigenous political prisoner ever, like, held by the United States government. He was incarcerated for nearly 5 decades, 50 years. And just this year, he was officially released. He was pardoned by the Biden administration and finally released. But leading up to that, there was decades, lives of people that were dedicated to his freedom. You know, a lot of prayers, a lot of ceremonies, marches, walks across the country had happened over those 5 decades. And something that's really important to realize about the American Indian Movement is the American Indian Movement is first and foremost a spiritual movement. So, like, if you listen to stories about how decisions were made even in the past, like with the American Indian Movement, like occupation at Wounded Knee, the Trail of Broken Treaties, nothing was done without a ceremony, right? Like, the decisions were not being made out of ego or pride or like, this is what we need to do, right? It was spiritually led. And when I was a part of the Grand Governing Council, you know, there were conversations about Leonard, and I asked, you know, what are we doing? As AIM, what are we doing? He is in there because of the American Indian Movement, because of standing up and fighting for his people, and what are we doing now for him to be released? And really nobody had like a good answer, right? So what we did is we took that question, that prayer, and we brought it into ceremony. And it was out of those ceremonies that it came in that we needed to do a walk, that we needed to walk from the heart of the movement here in Minneapolis, where the movement was started, to Washington, D.C., that we needed to carry that prayer from here to there to those people that were in those positions of influence, that prayer would be carried there to them, that there would be a shift, that there would be a change that would lead to his release. And so that's what we did. You know, we walked 1,103 miles, 2.5 months. We went Minneapolis, Madison, Wisconsin, Chicago, South Bend, Indiana, Toledo, Ohio, Pittsburgh, you know, and into Washington, D.C., where we ended the walk with thousands of people walking the last mile there in D.C. and having a rally. You know, and then after that walk, the next year, Indian Collective did the caravan, where they did a caravan from the Jumping Bull Camp, where the shootout originally happened that Leonard was in prison for, all the way to Washington, D.C., and then they kind of took on like the lobbying for his freedom, and ultimately he was released. He was released this year. So that was kind of my big involvement. I was the lead organizer for the walk, and honestly, it was an honor to even do that. It was a blessing that I was even in a position where I could just sacrifice that amount of time to do something like that. So yeah, definitely. I don't know, sometimes it makes me emotional to think about, or like when I see pictures of him free now, I get emotional, or I see videos of him.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask, like, how was it when you finally seen like Leonard in like the flesh?
So I don't know, it was kind of, they always say, like, I've heard this saying, like, never meet your heroes, right? But like for me, like, meeting him, I was like, okay, we did it. Like, not only not like we did it, like the people who did the walk, but like everybody, like even people that have taken their journeys that are not here, that dedicated years to his freedom. Like, everybody did it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and even spiritually speaking, like, maybe it took those people being on the other side to also, you know, get him free. Because, like, I believe, like, we're not only, like, in a war here in this realm, we're also in a spiritual war, right? Like,
right.
with those forces that continue to oppress our people. And I think it takes our ancestors being on that side fighting, too, for big things to happen.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So, like, also considering you fought so hard for his freedom, what were, like, how were you feeling the moments adding up to, like, his release? Like, the decision of, like, whether he would be released or not?
So, on the White House page, like, there's the briefing, like, virtual room or whatever, where they release press releases, like, as they're making announcements. And in the days, like, leading up, I was just, like, refreshing it. And then that morning, I remember waking up, like, Biden literally had until noon, like, to the end of his presidency. And I was, like, refreshing it. It got down to, like, the last hour, then, like, the last 30 minutes. And I was, like, just so emotional, and I was like, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Like, we had been through this with Obama. And then, same thing, refreshing. And then all of a sudden, there it was. And I was like, what? And I think I, like, immediately went and woke up my husband. I'm like, he did it. He let him go. And I called Nick Estes, who's done an incredible amount of work for Leonard. And I told him what happened. And he was like, I don't know. It was just, I was shaking, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, I just couldn't almost process that it was real.
Yeah.
Because a part of me had not given up, but almost, like, accepted, you know, that he might not ever be free.
Yeah, that's a big win for our community. And it's crazy how they waited till, like, last minute.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they definitely knew what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
mm-hmm. No, they knew, and I think they were playing politics to the end, you know. And,
yeah.
But they did it, and he's free. He's chilling in Turtle Valley right now.
Yeah. Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah. Anyways, thank you for that story. But talk a little bit about I guess the Roof Depot, and I guess a little bit more about IPM, because I know that's how, like, that really got the gears moving in.
Yeah. That was kind of like the spark, so to say. And it's crazy because it actually ties into everything that we were just talking about with Leonard, because the walk for Leonard ended in November of 2022. I stayed in D.C. like a couple of weeks to do some lobbying for Leonard, like meeting with senators. And then I think I drove to, like, Kentucky and saw my mom, and then literally just drove here. Like, I moved here at the end of November. So then it was like November, December, I rested because, you know, girl was tired from walking for 2.5 months. Like, and I was kind of also, like, getting to know community here. I knew some community members, like, just from traveling and being here, like with the American Indian movement.
Mm-hmm.
But I was just kind of, like, finding my footing here in community. And during these conversations, I'm hearing, like, these whisperings of, like, oh, the depot. And I'm like, what is this? What's the depot? And so come to find out, the depot, or the Roof Depot, as we know it now, is a site just a couple of blocks south of Little Earth United Tribes, Little Earth Housing. It's a, like, 7.5 acre site that has a warehouse that was built by Sears. But before the warehouse was there was a like a power plant pollutant that contaminated most of Southside with arsenic. It's actually deemed like a Superfund site because of the levels of arsenic that was released into the soil and into the water. So much so that, like, I think in the 2000s they came and, like, dug up everybody's yards and, like, removed the topsoil. Like,
they did do that.
Like some crazy shit. Like, they just came and took the soil and replaced it because it had arsenic in it. But where this warehouse had been built, it, like, sealed all the arsenic in there. And the city had owned the site for like 10 years, and community members had been for a decade trying to purchase the site. And the community had plans for, an indoor urban garden in this warehouse, for community space for offices, for affordable housing, all of these things. Had this really beautiful community plan. And so I was getting like updates on this because it was kind of coming to this like pivotal point where the city had decided that they were going to demolish the warehouse, which was going to then like release the arsenic in this like arsenic plume, and turn it into a giant parking lot for the public works trucks. So it was going to turn into like this giant like diesel like fueling center with arsenic. And so community was really trying to stop that. And, we were hearing like, oh, it's okay. It's going to be fine. We're going to win. And then I think it was in February, they were like, no, we're not going to win. The city's going to win. And demolition was set for February 27th. And for me, that date was powerful because that is also Liberation Day, like for the occupation of Wounded Knee in South Dakota. And so, we were talking about like spiritual things earlier and like doing things, through ceremony. We had pipe ceremony. We went to Medicine Men, and that's when we were like, okay, we gotta do an occupation. Like they can't do this. And so that's what we decided to do. We took the depot, and because of that, it politicized this issue so much, like with the response from the city, MPD doing their raid, of the occupation. Like I think myself and 7 others got arrested that day. And it got so much attention that the community was able to win in the courts and demolition was halted. So like to this day, it's still there. Community's been able to raise money through the state and investments to purchase the site. And it's a beautiful thing. But from that moment is what really birthed the Indigenous Protector movement. Because obviously like me and Vinny knew each other. Crow, I had already known Crow like through the American Indian movement. That was really my introduction to Auntie Jolene, and then pulling Nick in when Nick Estes had recently moved here to start teaching at the U, and we already had the relationship for working on everything with Leonard, and that's when we were like, there's this niche here that needs to be met, and nobody's filling it, and so instead of us pointing fingers, like let's just do something about it. And so all of us got together and we founded the Indigenous Protector movement. I think we got like our first grant that year in 2023, officially opened our office less than a year later on Franklin Avenue, and have been rocking strong. Ever since then, like every single day we're busy. The guys are out, boots on the ground, and then it's just constant calls and needs being met. And, I'm excited for the future because I truly believe that the best days of our people are ahead of us. And if IPM can be a small part of that, or making like that future a reality, then like I'm down. I'm super down.
What are some things that like you hope to see in the future within our community, or like with IPM, or even with yourself?
My biggest dream is for all of our people, and when I say our people, I mean Indigenous people. I don't care if it's like North or South America, right? Our people, Indigenous people to the Americas, that we are all sober, that we are free of drugs and alcohol, that our people can heal from our traumas, from the historical trauma, so much that, that they don't drink, they don't use drugs, they don't need to smoke pot, they, get off fentanyl, whatever it is, because like we can't expect our people to show up to an action, when they can like barely take care of themselves.
Yeah.
Right.
And so imagine how strong like we would be as a people if we were all sober. Like we would be unstoppable.
Yes. You're gonna make me cry. Yeah, that's a good thing to be hopeful for. I feel like we all are hopeful for that. And it's important to like keep that hope and not give up on our community, and keep treating like our relatives like people.
Yes.
And yeah.
Oh, that was amazing, and I'm sure many more people share your vision.
Yeah.
You know, I do too. You know.
Yeah.
And I try and live a good lifestyle too, just like you and my father. And you know, I do think that IPM will be doing, you know, great things in the future. I mean, like, that's how we're here right now. That's why we're able to do this podcast right now.
Yeah.
Because of IPM.
Yeah. Proud of you guys. It's a good podcast.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Gets canceled. No.
Gets pulled after the first episode.
Do we have time for one more question?
We got like 1 minute.
Oh. Well, quickly, I guess, like, what comes with, like, all of us being sober is, like, taking care of our mental health. And I kind of asked Vinny the same question, but, like, what are some ways you suggest taking care of your mental health, or, like, ways that you yourself take care of your mental health?
I'm a big advocate of therapy. I think that, and here, like in Minneapolis, it's special because there are indigenous therapists, like, that you can actually go see. Like, I think that that's important. And I know it's different for everybody, but, like, for me, when I was getting sober and healing, and even to this day, like, you know, if I'm having a hard time, like, I go to ceremony. Ceremony is so important, and, like, reconnecting with those traditional roots and those spirits. Like, you know, we hear people talk about the spirits, but they are very real things. They have names, they have homes, they have places that they have songs. And if you can, like, reconnect to that and build those relationships with them, like, you're never alone. And I think that that's important to remember.
I agree. Well, that's all the time we have. Okay. So thank you for being our guest.
Yep, thank you for your stories and your words.
Yep.
Now we're here with Vin Dion for some insight on a few things we've talked about in his role here in the Southside Indigenous community. So do you want to just start by giving, like, your own introduction, who you are or what you do in the community?
Yeah, for sure. Bonjour, everybody. My name is Vinny Dion. I'm born and raised South Minneapolis. I am an enrolled member of the Turtle Mountain Band of Anishinaabe or Chippewa, whichever one you want to use. But I was born and raised here over at Little Earth. Wear many hats in the community. Part of Many Shield Society, the Little Earth Protectors, Indigenous Protector Movement, and as well as the lead outreach manager for the American Indian Community Development Corporation.
Nice. Thank you. I'll start off with asking a question. What initially pushed you into activism and community work, and what makes you so passionate about it?
Great question. What really got me initially is when I was in a federal penitentiary, at USP Big Sandy down in Kentucky, and one of my cellmate actually, but there was another brother in there as well too. One of them was a part of AIM, the American Indian Movement. He was a brother doing a life sentence.
Oh, wow.
And the other brother, he was also doing a life sentence. And they started, like, giving me AIM books to read, all the old ones, you know, from, like, Dennis Banks, Russell Means, Clyde Belcourt. So I really started studying up on that stuff. And I was seeing a lot of, especially with Clyde, you know, him being from the same community I'm from, the lifestyle that he was living before prison, and to see that he started working on changing his life around while he was inside, and that's pretty much how the birthplace of the movement came about as well. And I just seen how I was living at that time, and I'm like, wow, that would be great for me to get into. I wish AIM was still around, right? But the activist stuff too was my other brother, his name was Rock Rangel. And he was really one that pushed me into the activist work, because he was like, you know, it's really about standing up for the people. And he's like, you've already been here with us. There's nothing that scares us anymore. So what are we, you know, you go out here. You know, most people, they don't stand up is because they're scared of jail. They're scared to get locked up. They're scared to get maced, you know, those types of things. And as someone that's been through the system, I also know what to expect. you know. So that's initially what got my attention on activist work. And then when I did get out here, there was some, you know, after the riots, AIM kicked back up, and we were off to the races after that.
Is that when you got out, like when the riots started?
Yeah, I got out in 2019, so the riots were like just after that.
Wow.
You mentioned you were incarcerated. We talked a little bit about that. Can you tell us a little bit more about, you know, like what happened, what your experiences were when you were incarcerated, and how it was coming back out?
Great question. First off, you know, I went to federal prison due to my being caught up in active addiction. So I went to prison for selling drugs. And that's what it took for me personally to actually get sober, was, you know, just getting thrown in a jail cell and drying out, you know. So I went inside and weighing 160 pounds, little skinny guy. And my county jail stay, I ate a lot of like honey buns and things like that, being lazy. So I ended up getting pretty chubby, and then I went to federal prison. And now that's a whole nother beast in itself, especially those higher security institutions they have. They can be scary. That's where I've seen some of the strongest warriors, men. Everyone works out in there. But also you meet some really good people in there too. You know, to watch the brothers, they work out every day in there. They support one another. They look after one another. They hold each other accountable. So I learned a lot of discipline while I was in there. And that's really where I started healing on myself as well, too, because also in the federal system, they have a lot of classes you can take in there. Really good classes, too, great ones. And so that's where I was able to start figuring out about myself, my shortcomings, where I went wrong, my mindset, you know, learning about, you know, unhealed traumas and toxic mindsets and those types of things, and just understanding them within myself, right, where I was coming up short at and what I could work on. So, and after I got out, also when you're in there a while, you know, I did 6 years and 2 months straight, you become institutionalized. And I got used to inside there the respect level you have for every man in there. You know, like you will never cut no one off. You will never say anything disrespectful to someone unless you're ready to really take it all the way with them. And so coming out, that was one of my hardest adjustments, was coming out here. And I remember my first time driving a car again, and someone cut me off. And I wasn't used to that, you know. I was used to, okay, who was here first? You go first. So that was the toughest adjustment I had coming back from being institutionalized, was just the disrespect that we have and disregard we have for each other out here in the real world that is different in there. You know, we all have this image of prison, of being this big, big, scary place, but it's really, especially where I was at, it was really big on respect. You know, and that's why I can see some of those old timers in there. They don't even want to get out because they like that respect level that's going on in there, and it is a lot different out here. You know, there's no accountability out here, and that was the hardest part, I think, for me, was readjusting to society. Another thing that was really hard for me too was coming out and seeing my children, watching them grow. Specifically Bear, when I went in, you were a boy, and I came out and you're a man, and that was hard for me, you know, knowing and understanding that I missed out on a lot of your life, you know. That's also a big reason why I go so hard in all the things I do, is because I know the consequences and actions of my actions, you know. And that's the big reason why I stay sober. You know, it's a big reason why I no longer commit crimes. It's no longer why I'm out here dealing drugs to my community, is there are consequences to your actions. And one of them for me that was major was being gone from my children for so long, and them having to grow and struggle out here without me. And I don't want to start crying, but but no, that was really a game changer for me and why I do what I do.
Wow, that was very beautiful. Yeah, I just want to say, like, congratulations, though, because I know that can be really hard, like, that transition, and especially, like, I guess realizing that there are, like, consequences, but being, like, big enough to change that within yourself, like, that's admiring, and you do a lot of good work today, so, yeah. I did have a question, though, like, when you were incarcerated, was it hard to, like, keep your cultural identity, or were you pretty in tune with it?
Oh man, I probably got more in tune with it there than I have out here. One thing they have is the Native American Religious Freedom Act, that AIM actually fought for, and we have everything that we need inside there. We have a sweat lodge on every compound has a sweat lodge in the federal system that we get to go out. We get our tobacco, we get our pipe, we get our drum, and we get our lodge every week. So all the natives, that's what we're doing. Every single week we're going out there. And then some places as well, another place I was at when I was down in Rochester is we had sweat lodge on Saturdays, we had drum group Monday nights, and then we had Native American church, which I believe was on Sundays. But there was always something going on for the natives, so it really kept me in tune with my culture and who I was, and meeting brothers from all different tribal nations, and under there we all fly under the native banner together. I know some people like to say pan-Indian. I'm not a very big fan of that word, because we don't have the numbers anyway to be dividing, especially us here in the city. In the city setting, there's probably who knows how many tribal nations we have out here. Right. We're all indigenous people, and we all have to support and love one another.
I agree. Yeah, that's cool. I didn't know that they, like, had so many resources for indigenous people in there, so that's really nice to hear.
Yeah, you said you got out a little before the riot started or whatever. Can you tell us a little bit about your experiences during all that? And I did mention that you took me out on patrol.
During the riots?
Yep.
Ooh, okay. I remember seeing the video of what happened with that officer and George Floyd, and I remember sharing it to everyone on my Facebook Messenger. Everyone got it. I was so upset. I didn't know what else to do. I just knew I was fuming over it. And a lot of people were staging, as they should, protests, and they wanted to get their voice heard, and they're not going to take this. But while you're doing that, you also have other people. And this is one thing I learned doing activist work is we're out there to use our voice, right? And we're here to be heard, and you're gonna feel it, right? But also, we have other people that come in just to shake things up. When you have a crowd of 2,000 angry people and someone starts busting windows, other people are gonna feel inclined to start busting windows. And so, honestly, I believe that's what happened there. Why our city burned to the ground, and it just one negative action just turned the whole thing negative, where we had to protect our community. We had to protect where we're from. Born and raised at Little Earth, I'm gonna protect that till the day I die. Franklin Avenue, the Native American, what do they call it? The American Indian Cultural Corridor on Franklin Avenue. We had to protect that as well. Those are where our native businesses are. We barely own anything as it is. Our community is so small that we wanted to defend anything that we had and made sure it wouldn't burn down. And so protector groups popped up. That was the birth of the Little Earth Protectors. It was the rebirth of the American Indian Movement Patrol. A lot of people, Mike Gozy, AICDC, were out on the Ave, and it was just a great feeling to look around you and see 200 strong natives coming together. Some of the guys that were coming together were old enemies of mine. And here we were standing shoulder to shoulder, ready to protect our community. And for me, that really lit the fire to see the unity that we can have. To light that fire, to see us coming together like that in negative times, but just think what we can do when it's a positive time when we come together like that. That's when we're strong. Mm-hmm. And that was the biggest thing I learned from then. I could give you all kinds of stories of things that went on the time we got shot at by the state troopers over there outside of Little Earth. My son Bear likes to tease me about that because I was the first one running. But also I was the first one running because I'm fresh out of federal prison, right? And every night at 8 o'clock I'm getting a call from my federal probation officer saying it's curfew. And if you get caught after 8 o'clock, you're violated. So, my son also knows I was one of the first ones there to stand up, and lead that charge. I just wasn't the first one ready to get arrested that night or any night after that.
That's true.
Do you feel like being a community protector, is more nerve-wracking, or you're more confident about it? Okay, I got this.
I think I was born to do that.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think every native out here. I'm not going to speak for the women, but I'll speak for the men because I'm a man and I know how we live and I know what's within us. What's born within us. We were all born with that warrior spirit. And our young men, they're having a hard time showing that warrior spirit in a positive way. I also lived that lifestyle as well too, being that young warrior, knowing it was in me, wanting to defend our community, but I was doing it in the wrong way. Now you get older, you understand, we have to protect everybody. Our young men, they join gangs and they start dividing the community. And then there's 5 different gangs that all don't get along, and then they're shooting each other, and they make it unsafe for everybody. Now, even with a lot of our Many Shields brothers, our older brothers, we all come from different gangs that used to war and have beef back in the day. Now we're all older brothers now and coming together, understanding and realizing after all our old war wounds we had that what we were fighting for then was really for nothing. Now we're fighting for our people. Now we're fighting for not just the safety of the community right now, but protecting our community in the future,
You're all geared out. So with that, what you just mentioned was the Many Shield Society. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, Many Shield Society. So it is. I'll go back to the very, very beginning, all right? The very, very beginning, it was the vision of Dr. Stately over at NAC. He had a nephew coming home from prison, and he thought about what resources are out here for someone like him. A native brother coming out, doing his best to get his life in order, but not having the resources, not having the support, And they reached out to me. And honestly, looking back, I think of the life I lived at that point, coming home from prison, all these mess-ups, all these slip-ups I did, the way I was thinking, the way I was living, and then changing all that around. I was the perfect candidate for his vision. And with Many Shield Society, we didn't start out as the Many Shield Society. We started out as the Men's Warrior Society, meeting at Little Earth, 2501 Cedar Avenue. And it started out, I think we had maybe 10 guys show up to the first meeting. And this thing just kept growing, getting bigger and stronger. Unimaginably stronger, honestly. To the point now where we don't even make posts and put it out there because we have so many guys that show up, that support it, that are down for it. But started out as just a men's talking circle, a support group, us learning from one another, learning, being vulnerable with other men. Especially when men hear me being vulnerable, they see me as this big, strong, tough warrior, right? But then they hear me over here having heart-to-heart conversations and really showing we can be soft, that we do have a soft side. At the end of the day, we're all just human beings, and I've never met anyone, especially being inside. I've been around some of the most scariest guys you could ever see and think. I'm talking these 6'5" buff natives, tattoos on their face. Guys that if you're walking down the street, you're like, oh man, I don't want. You're scared of them. But to hear them share their experiences, showing their heart, that's what opened it up with me. Going back to those same two I told you that inspired me. Those guys really had I learned a lot from them. I learned a lot within myself, humbling myself. But also I wanted to pass that on, us men learning to be humble. And it starts with us being humble with each other before we can go home and be humble. But yeah, back to Many Shields. That's how it started, just that. And then we started doing volunteer security stuff, late at night, strolling down Franklin Avenue, 30, 40 men, just strolling around, making sure the community was safe, passing out waters on hot nights, things like that. Just building that presence out there and, introducing ourselves to the community. And then we got the grant to do patrol work. And with this patrol work, we also adapted to what's going on in today's society. It's not about rolling down on someone and being a tough guy to them. It's about treating them like a human being. Even if we have to redirect them off a property or if they're using drugs, those types of things, we do that as nicely with, humanly, as treating them like a human being as possible. Not treating anyone disrespectfully, treat them with respect. I tell the guys all the time, like, think about what if that was your son out there. How would you want someone to treat them? Or if that was your niece or your nephew or your daughter, And, that's what I preach to the brothers. And, that's our overall outlook on how we approach our security stuff.
Thank you for your time. And thank you for your words and your inspiration.
Yeah, there's back to what you're saying about, like, I like that you give them all room to be vulnerable, because I feel like, especially within our community, there's not much room for men to be vulnerable. Like, they kind of have to push their mental health to the side and, like, not talk about it. So, like, I guess, what are, like, some ways that you suggest, like, men in our community, or even, like, being a community worker and seeing everything that you see within our community, how do you, like, deal with your mental health, or, like, what advice do you have for others, like, for dealing with their mental health?
It starts with us talking about it. When we and I lived my whole life this way too, seeing trauma, or even if I inflicted trauma on someone, denying it. Oh, that didn't happen. Or trying to sweep it under the rug. We have to be open about it. We have to, whether it's going to a therapist or in a group setting speaking about it. You'd be surprised when you started being vulnerable around other brothers, their vulnerabilities will come out too, because you're showing them it's okay. It's okay to get that out. Yeah, back to the mental health. I'd say so many ways. Therapy, talking it out with your bros, but also, like, being real about it too. Dig deep, don't hide anything. You have to be real with yourself before you can get help anywhere, And that's the hardest thing for us as human beings to do, is to admit our wrongs or admit our faults. But when we can start doing that, we can better ourselves. But we have to understand where it comes from first, or what the problem is. And like I said, therapy, go to the sweat lodge, go to ceremony. But the main thing for us as Native people, our community. We need our community. That's we've always been a tribal, community-oriented people. Since probably the beginning of time. So I know for me, being in my community, that's healing. Helping my people, that's healing. Being the best person I can be for my community, it's all healing.
In the cities, the reality of heavy surveillance and incarceration for our community is always felt. The Native American community faces over double the nation average of incarceration in both federal and state prisons. But yet, we are still here.
Despite the disparities, the Southside holds it down and comes together when it is necessary, motivating the community to take action and stand their ground. Just like sage, we don't just grow on the res.
You can always find sage in the city.
There, Savannah, switch spots. That's better. Alright, let's get a shot.